Good evening, councillors, officers. Welcome to the meeting here of Corangamite Shire, our March council meeting that we're holding in Port Campbell. A warm welcome to those who are joining us in the gallery and especially to those who are joining us from home. Can I begin with the prayer, please? We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us who serve as leaders to remember that all our decisions are made in the best interests of the people, culture and the environment of the Corangamite Shire. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal elders and peoples past, present and emerging. I'd like to introduce councillors and staff that we have around the table this evening. To my left is Deputy Mayor Geraldine Kennedy, Councillor Joe Beard, Councillor Jamie Vogels. To my right, Councillor Kate Macon, Councillor Laurie Hickey and Councillor Nick Cole. We also have Acting CEO Mr Michael Tudball, and we have Ms Brooke Love, Director of Works and Services, Mrs Justine Linley, Director of Sustainable Development, Mr James Plozza, our Governance Coordinator, and to the right, Mr David Harrington, Director of Corporate Services and Community Services, and Manager of Finance, Simon Vicari. Mr CEO, we have no apologies for this evening's meeting. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I might have a conflict of interest, sorry.
Councillor Vogels.
And that'll be item, sorry, for my unpreparedness, which would be right down for the Grey Street Special Charge Scheme, yes.
Okay, item 9.8. So we'll get you to do the appropriate paperwork at the conclusion of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of February have been circulated. Someone prepared to move those minutes, please. Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Seconded, Councillor Cole. Is there any discussion on those minutes? If not, all in favour? Carried. Deputations and presentations. Mr Tudball, I believe there has been a written deputation sent into Council.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, and through you, yes, we do have one written deputation who can't be in attendance tonight. It's relevant to agenda item 8.1, a planning application for a two-lot subdivision by Oliver Shikor. I will read it because it goes into some detail, so with your forbearance. Dear Mayor and Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to provide a written deputation in relation to the above agenda item. Unfortunately, I'm unable to attend the meeting in person. I'm the owner and operator of Otway Coastal Villas, which are small-scale holiday units located overlooking the wetlands at the edge of Princetown. There are two groups of accommodation units in two separate building envelopes with separate sewer and water. The first envelope has 2 units, has been operational since 2019. The second envelope will have 3 units and 1 maintenance shed, but have only constructed one of the units in the shed at this time. The construction of the other 2 one-bedroom villas is currently at a standstill due to increased construction costs and interest rates. However, the sale of the two-bedroom villas would help fund construction of the other villas and provide more tourist accommodation. The land title currently has 2 separately saleable parcels. The boundary of the parcels is located in a section of the wetlands. I am informed that I can obtain separate titles and sell these separately without obtaining further approvals. I will say at this point in time, Mayor and Councillors, we have no information to back up anything that's here besides the submission we have in front of us. As part of the approval process for the units, I obtained a Cultural Heritage Management Plan with Archeo Environments Proprietary Limited and a Land Management Plan by Mark Trengove Ecological Services. I've been slowly implementing the land management plan over time, and I have planted and maintained hundreds of Indigenous trees, shrubs and ground covers. I put in place stock exclusion fencing and also control and eliminate blackberry and ragwort. There are a number of points that I would like to reiterate. The new boundaries would separate each building envelope but would not change the outcomes of the Land Management Plan or CHMP. The LMP could be attached to title by a Section 173 agreement if Council agree. On the ground, there will be no change in the buildings and the accommodation can still operate either as one entity or as two. There would be more than one unit within each new lot, so they would still operate as group accommodation. The re-subdivision would provide financial leverage to complete the development. I understand that this is not a planning matter. The application won't cause harm or loss to the community or environment and has received no objection for locals. I hope that you will consider these matters and view my application favourably. Kind regards, Oliver Shikor. And that's relevant to agenda item 8.1 on tonight's agenda, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Tudball. Councillors, move to committee reports, item 7. 7.1 is the Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Report to Council, March 2023. Thank you, Mr Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This report provides Council with a summary of activities undertaken by the Audit and Risk Committee since the last report to Council in September 2022. This report is provided in accordance with the Audit and Risk Committee Charter, but also the Local Government Act, which requires the chairperson to report to Council every 6 months. During the review period, the committee met twice on the 8th of December and the 9th of March, with the committee membership not varying during this period. A record of attendance and committee activity is provided in the report. The committee made 5 recommendations to Council, which include 3 items in tonight's agenda relating to financial policies and the committee charter. Mayor, it is recommended that Council receive the report.
Thank you, Mr Harrington. Councillors, recommendation on page 12. Someone like to move the recommendation, please? Councillor Canady, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Councillor Canady.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I could say that members of the Audit and Risk Committee do take their role very seriously and they're very committed to the work that they do. I think the report has covered all the work that we've been doing, that we've been looking into it quite carefully. During that time, we've had the opportunity to review our charter. There was good feedback on the charter that went out for our consideration, and we have updated a version and endorse the adoption of the version of that new charter. There was the addition of some really key things that sort of reflect what we need to be looking out for in the workplace these days. So I'm at the same time I'm pleased that Councillor Macon has joined the committee. We're glad to have her there and have her input, and I support the recommendation that's before us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Canady. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I second everything that Councillor Canady has said. I'd just like to say thank you to Philippa D, Lisa Young and Colin Heyman for making me feel quite welcome, and the rest of the group. I have only been there since November, but my fellow Councillor Hickey has left the seat nice and comfortable for me, so I'm slowly getting my feet under the table and working out what happens in audit and risk, but I'm looking forward to the next 12 months and seeing what we can do, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Macon. Councillors, is there anything further? I'll put it to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 7.2 is the Audit and Risk Committee Charter. Mr Harrington.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This report recommends the adoption of the updated Audit and Risk Committee Charter. The Charter is a requirement under Section 54 of the Local Government Act 2020, and this is the first update to the Charter since the original adoption in August 2020. Feedback was sought from the Audit and Risk Committee members and senior officers. This feedback has been incorporated into the updated Charter with amendments to the fraud and corruption responsibilities to align with the new standards, and clarification of the process for the committee to procure independent legal or professional advice if required. The Audit and Risk Committee reviewed the updated Charter at its March 2023 meeting and passed a resolution recommending that Council adopt the revised Charter. Mayor, there is a recommendation before you.
Thank you, Mr Harrington. Councillors, recommendation to adopt the new Charter. Someone like to move that, please? Councillor Macon, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Canady.
Thank
our
you.
gun team on the Audit and Risk Committee. Councillor Macon.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to Mr Harrington and his team for putting this charter together. There's only minor changes to it, but it's also a very important document for the Audit and Risk Committee. So I'm more than happy to pass his charter and put it through. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Macon. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the changes to the charter were minor, but I think the feedback was really important because there was the insertion of some keywords into that charter that just make it more relevant and current with the standards that we have today for the operation of our organisation. And it just allows adequate scope for the conduct of the business of the committee to maintain that sort of extra layer of risk and control that's so important these days. So, I think I'm just trying to find the actual insertion of the word. It's just a tiny little thing, but it makes a difference. Sorry, I can't find it right now. But it's just brought us up to date, made us relevant. So support the recommendation to endorse the charter. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kennedy. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 8.1 is planning permit application P 2022-109, two-lot subdivision with common property, a realignment of boundaries at 7914 Great Ocean Road, Princetown. Mrs Linley, can you introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The application is seeking approval for a two-lot subdivision realignment of boundaries at 7914 Great Ocean Road, Princetown. Officers have assessed the application against the Corangamite planning scheme and recommend that the proposed subdivision does not provide an acceptable response to the relevant planning policy and controls. The site was developed and used for group accommodation following a planning permit issued in September 2018, namely for 2 units with altered access. Construction of the units was completed in 2019. The planning permit issued in 2018 is subject to a number of conditions, including ongoing obligations to manage the use and development and requiring an integrated land management plan covering the whole or the entirety of the property. The current proposal seeks to separate the tourist accommodation units into individual lots. Following extensive assessment in accordance with the relevant local and state planning policy, officers consider that the application for the re-subdivision of the land, which seeks to split the tourist accommodation into 2 separate lots, has not been adequately justified against the purpose of the Rural Conservation Zone, nor has it been justified against the environment protection objectives of the Environmental Significance Overlay Schedule 1 and policy directions of the Corangamite planning scheme. It is therefore recommended that Council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant the permit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs Linley. Councillors, someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Vogels, do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey. Councillor Vogels, I'd like to speak to you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. We went down and had a look at this block, and it's gorgeous down there. The wetlands, the trees that he mentioned. There's no weeds anywhere. It's just an immaculate site that he's looking after. But it's hard swaying each way on this one. But I'm going to go with the officer's recommendation, mainly for the decision, because the use of development was previously approved for group accommodation and was permitted based on the land being managed as a whole, not split up into separate sites. And I just can't go against the officer's recommendation on this one, so I think they've got it right.
Thanks, Councillor Vogels. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do agree with Councillor Vogels. The place does certainly look great, and there is a need for seaside group accommodation, but the planning permit, as we heard from 2018, does go as a whole. So it's a bit unfortunate that I need to also support the officer's recommendation, because I think this would be a great subdivision. But however, I support the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, is there further comments to make on this? Councillor Beard.
Yeah, and thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I reiterate what both my previous councillors said, and I wholeheartedly agree with the recommendation the officers have put forward, and I too was fortunate enough to go down and visit on site. It's an amazing facility, and I really do think it's underutilised, and a lot of people still don't know about it. And I think COVID has certainly had a play in that. Unfortunately, that word keeps appearing, but I really can't get my head around how this application really can demonstrate why a subdivision will enhance the use of this space. And knowing what we went through in terms of granting the permit some years ago for the group accommodation, my thoughts haven't changed on that. I just think it's an untapped resource at the moment. So I wish obviously the owner of that property all the best in hopefully to get a better outcome for himself, but more so for that property.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? I'll put this matter to the vote. All in favour? It's carried. Officers' reports, and 9.1 is the Port Campbell report. Mrs. Linley, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is to provide an overview of activities and projects undertaken in Port Campbell in recent years, with a focus on those projects directly involving community input and contribution. Very much the community has participated in direct delivery of many of these projects. It provides an outline of the community priorities and a status report on several of the major public and private sector projects that are approved and planned for delivery. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs. Linley. Councillors, someone like to move a motion to accept this report? It was a very interesting read, so a little bit of history of Port Campbell. Councillor Vogels, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon, thank you. Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Justine, for presenting the report, and thanks to Brooke for writing it up, being the author of that report. I've got a heap of stuff written down, but firstly, Port Campbell is a completely different town now than when I was young 30 years ago, and I was talking to Tross before, so am I right in my memories that Port Campbell pretty much had a fish and chip shop, apartment, a grocery, and that was it yeah, that's about right. So now that there's so much accommodation, plenty of other shops and stuff, and a whole lot of tourism, and obviously missing a toilet block out here on my right, that sort of was the main view back in the day. So she's come a long way. So I'll go through sort of what I've prepared. And I'd like to thank the Port Campbell Surf Lifesaving Club for the venue and all that they do for the community, which we all know goes far beyond just patrolling the beach in summer. We've got great depth in the community. The Port Campbell is a coastal town and a rural town and a tourist town, as highlighted in the recent census. Food and fibre is the biggest employer, followed by tourism accommodation. More importantly, Port Campbell is hometown for the locals who call this town home. So tonight is great to be in Port Campbell on the back of another successful Cray Fest, which kicked off last Friday with a high-end degustation here, and apparently it was rather tasty. Cray Fest ran through to Sunday. Sunday I came down and for Brett Clark kicked off with a welcome to country and some storytelling, sharing some early history with a large gathering on the foreshore, which was great, and moved on next to the treasure hunt for the kids, which was great to see all the kids running around digging and having a ball. But then the parade kicked off, and it was good. So much support shown by the people lining the streets all around Port Campbell. It was great to see, and I think there's many smiles from the people in the parade as from the people on the sides looking on. And Kaz was exceptional, as Eva Carmichael, that was great. And the turnout from the Kindu kids marching, that was huge too. They're having a ball, and they sort of takes me back, these parades, from when I was a kid in Timboon, when we used to get dragged out to made to walk around Timboon dressed up or riding a bike and end up at the rec reserve for a few laps, and it was a massive community sort of thing that you don't see much of anymore, especially parades and stuff, and it was just a really good turnout from all the services, the fire brigade and the surf club, and thank them all very much. for their efforts. So the parade finished up at the Public Purpose Reserve, which is another asset with recent upgrade achievements, where the people enjoyed food, live music and visited the Flotsam Jetsam art exhibition in the art space, which is another fantastic achievement that's mentioned in the report, and it's well used and well supported by the community, as is the Hastbury Historical Society collecting, preserving and displaying historical documents from the wider area. So a special thanks to the Port Campbell Progress Group, which the guys are over here tonight to support as usual. They keep close ties with Council, updating myself and the Shire with Port Campbell issues and advocating on behalf of the local community and other groups in Port Campbell to consistently improve the livability of the town. So I thank them a hell of a lot. Port Campbell is a popular place to live. As it is to visit, it draws people from all over due to its natural beauty, and it was recently recognised as the friendliest town in the country. That's great for Port Campbell as well. From new walking tracks around town to the almost completed 12A's trail connecting Port Campbell and Timboon for bike riding and walking, which if you're walking you can actually come down the stairs and over the suspension bridge, which is another great achievement for Port Campbell, as mentioned in the report as well. And I think whether you're sitting on the beach, swimming in the ocean, jumping off the pier, catching a fish, surfing a wave, or going for a nature walk, which are all food for the soul, just remember there's always coffee and cake. Being such a popular destination presents its challenges with the inevitable increase in tourism. The Corangamite Shire has been working with local community groups, key stakeholders and Streetscape Committee members on the soon-to-commence town centre and foreshore upgrade to better manage the flow of visitors and better provide economic benefit to the town. So 3 tenders were received last Friday, which is great. And they're currently being evaluated by council officers, and we're soon to have a recommendation in early April, hopefully, just next week maybe, and be able to start soon after Easter. Port Campbell community has embedded within its a strong backbone of highly talented community leaders and volunteers, and I extend my heartfelt thanks to those whose dedication, determination and drive have led to these achievements and so many more. I also extend my thanks to Port Campbell community leaders and volunteers who have provided me with support, advice and knowledge, inspiration and mentoring. Sadly, some of these leaders are no longer with us, but they're always remembered and always in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vocals. Councillor Macon, not much left to say.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, there's not much left to say. I think
There's plenty left to say. I just had to shorten it all up.
I think Councillor Vocals has just wiped it all off the park. Well done. But I just want to say that the community and the Shire should be quite proud of what they've achieved by working hand in hand together. The projects that they have achieved is just outstanding. From the Crayfest, the film festival and everything else in between, I'm just astounded at how much Port Campbell has changed, and it's a change for the better. It's a very welcoming community and place to visit and stay and have fun. So I just want to thank the community and the council for everything they've achieved in that time frame. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillors, Councillor Beard.
Yes, and through you, Madam Mayor, and well said, Councillor Vocals. I know you do wear your heart on the sleeve and you're very protective of Port Campbell, so Port Campbell are very lucky to have such a great advocate sitting at the council table in yourself. I can remember 10 years ago, and I think there's some people in the room here too that were part of the community planning project, and it was a project that council undertook across all of our major towns, and it's pretty incredible when you look through the list of what the priority actions were 10 years ago to what you can actually tick off and put a line through now. The bottom of that was upgrade the streetscape. It's going to be it is the biggest project that Corangamite Shire has ever undertaken, and I really hope that Port Campbell people continue and the community continue to get behind that, because we want it to be as good as it can be, not only for the broader community, the broader community of Corangamite, but more importantly the people that do, as Councillor Vogel said, live and work here. and play every day. But looking through that list, not many communities can actually say they've achieved their major priorities. And so that's a credit to not only the community, but more importantly, the partnership between the community and council in achieving those projects. So it was an exciting project way back then, which is, wow, 10 years ago, but even more so now, to think you can actually hold your head up high and say we've achieved so much of at the time would have seemed so unachievable, particularly the walk bridge, the swing bridge out the back, and that is something that we're all really proud of, but that was driven by the community. So that's why council continued to invest in community planning, because we can see the benefits from not only a council perspective, but more importantly what the community gets out of it. So thank you for everyone who was part of that. As I said, I know a couple of you are here tonight, and it's great to see where it's got to now. So hats off to you, Councillor Vogels, for being part of that too.
Thank you, Councillor Beard.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed the recommendation thanks the community of volunteers and organisations who have worked in partnership to implement projects and plans in Port Campbell, and that acknowledgement is well deserved. But I would like to add something to that in relation to the 12 Apostles Trail that Council has completed to Port Campbell itself. We would like a partnership or the state government to work with us to finish that signature piece of the 12 Apostles Trail from Port Campbell up to the 12 Apostles. We need, that shared use trail is absolutely essential to deliver a great visitor experience, because we're working so hard to improve the visitor experience to Port Campbell, because that's going to be so valuable to the economy and the community in Port Campbell, but also Shire-wide as well. So we would be very appreciative of that support from the state government to help us complete the trail to the 12 Apostles, because it will be just an amazing finish, to that work that we've done, and would just bring enormous value to Port Campbell, the Shire, and the coastal area.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Well said. Anything further, councillors? Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to state about Port Campbell. I've been coming down here a long time. I used to come down and play in the pub. And ex-mayor Neil Trotter was in the audience, used to cook. And during the winters, as we were talking before, Neil said this place used to shut down from about a couple of weeks' time to the start of summer. There was hardly anyone around. We just get a few locals and people crawling out of the scrub. Nowadays, it is a thriving little town. Tourists all the time here. We've just been up the street with cars everywhere. There's people dining in cafes and restaurants. It's definitely changed its outlook. There's a lot more houses. There were 5-row shacks then, now they're substantial houses. So the town has definitely changed, and it's a lot more appealing for people to come and spend the weekend all year round. And this improved streetscape will help a lot. And so congratulations to Port Campbell for the work that's been going on.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillors, I'll put this to the vote, but before I do, I'll just pass on my thanks to the community. Port Campbell are an amazing community. They're very much can-do. They get things done. And it's been terrific over the last 10 years that Council's been able to work with them in partnership to achieve what's been done. And it was quite amazing when we saw the list of things that have been achieved, and the wonderful weekend at Crayfest, the amount of work and the volunteer hours that have gone into that was amazing. I would like to, Brooke has put in her report, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of John McLeod, the late John McLeod. John had such a strong volunteer ethic. He was part of so many community groups, and I think that he'll leave a lasting legacy on particularly young people in Port Campbell. I think probably, I don't imagine I'll be sitting around the table in 20 years, but we're probably going through the 20-year plan, what they've done, and they'll have achieved much, much more. So congratulate the community on what has occurred over the past 10 years. Councillors, if you're all happy, I'll put this to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.2, Community Group Loan Guarantee Policy. Mr Vicari, please.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, the Community Group Loan Guarantee Policy sets the guidelines that are used to assist council in considering requests to act as guarantor for loans to local community groups. There are a range of guidelines within the policy and reporting requirements, which are all designed to reduce the risk to council. So the only change in this policy after the review is that the project cost has been lifted from $100,000 to $200,000, which is obviously due to the increase in average project costs that we've seen going up in the last several years, and since that policy was adopted in 2020. So the loan guarantees have assisted community groups in the past on large-scale projects. They've given the ability to fund them, and we do currently have a guarantee in place, which is with the Camperdown Football Netball Club. So Councillors, the recommendation before you is to adopt the updated policy with that one change to the limit.
Thank you, Mr Vicari. Councillors, someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Hickey, second to Councillor Beard. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like I'm the only one who's got voice left after that last motion that went through, so I'm very happy to move this recommendation that the Community Loan Guarantee Policy dated January 2020 be revoked and the Council adopts the Community Group Loan Guarantee Policy dated March 2022, and still noting the fact that the cost has gone, 2023, noting that the cost has gone from, the loan has gone from $100,000 to $200,000 to cover what we all know has been an increase in costs. So happy to move this.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Beard.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr Vicari, first for the report. Very detailed, and completely agree that it's time for that amount to be lifted up. We've seen, as we all know, the inflation of so many costs, and our community groups are certainly not immune to that. I just think it sighs on the air of caution for our community groups to know that they can come to us and have us as loan guarantors as a backup, and we literally are a backup plan for them when they've got these incredible projects they want to deliver, but have got that insurity around their financing. And we're the first people to always say we don't want to be having them drain their bank accounts. I think we're quite, we're very supportive in that regard, that we're here for if and when they need us. And it certainly aligns with our council plan and the way that we support our communities, and that we want our communities to, and community groups, particularly sporting clubs and those that we've actually funded in the past, to be possibly the best that they can be. And having seen firsthand how a couple of these projects have played out, they could not have got these projects up without the loan guarantor from Corangamite Shire. So it's a great initiative that we've been able to keep in place, and completely support the uplift to that 200,000 for the what ifs. It's only a what if, and if required. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, put that to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.3 is the investment policy. Mr Vicari.
Thank you again. Through you, Madam Mayor, the investment policy establishes the basis for investment of council surplus funds, and its main aim is to optimise the balance between risk and return. So I do understand it, while it might be a very dry policy, it's very important as it looks to keep council's investments safe, but it also tries to maximise its returns in doing so. The policy has been reviewed by management at council and also by the Audit and Risk Committee, and there's only minor amendments proposed which are administrative in nature. So the recommendation before you, councillors, is to adopt the updated policy with those minor administrative changes.
Thank you, Mr Vicari. Councillors, someone like to move the investment policy, please? Councillor Kennedy, second to Councillor Beard. Thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's somewhat procedural, but at times, we do have surplus funds that, whilst they're almost always allocated for a project, in fact, probably just about always allocated for a project, sometimes there could be a period where they can be invested for benefit to the council and the community. So it's an important policy for us to be able to access that tool to manage our funds in the interest of the community. So I support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Beard.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for this report and the recommendation moved by Councillor Kennedy. Yeah, just a couple of slight track changes with duplication of wording, but this investment policy is super important. We've seen firsthand how we've been able to make it work in the benefit of Corangamite Shire ratepayers, and when we've received grants. It's no point having money just sitting in the bank not earning anything. We might as well have it invested and making some extra funds so we can better utilise that for our community benefit. And we've seen straight away the benefits of having that. We're not totally risky. I would say we're really quite conservative when it comes to risk, but it's important that we've got an investment policy to follow, that we keep maintaining the best possible responsibility of our finances as possible. So I think having this policy is a great one, and as I said, we've seen firsthand how we can work with an advantage of having investments done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beard. Councillors, all in favour? Carried. Item 9.4 is Works on Road Reserves Permit Policy. Thank you, Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, this report seeks adoption of the Works Within Road Reserve Permit Policy, which sets out the requirements relating to the issuing of permits for any proposed works that are within Council's road reserves. The policy has been reviewed with only one recommended change, and that is to incorporate the requirement for a pre and post works inspection. The reason for including that is to confirm the condition of the existing assets, Council's assets around the site, to ensure that any discrepancy for any damaged asset that may result as a part of the works are clear. The recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, sorry to move the recommendation, please. Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Macon. Thanks, Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that that's all fine to go through, and the changes do make sense because it's good to have a pre and post look at the assets, because sometimes there's a fair discrepancy in what the condition might have thought to have been before it was started and what's expected to be when it's finished. So like for like sounds good for me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have nothing further to add, so thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? All in favour? Carried. Item 9.5 is the Vehicle Crossings Policy. Ms Love, this is your report again.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, this policy ensures that the owners of land who have a properly constructed and maintained vehicle crossing at each of their vehicular access points. The policy takes into account pedestrian and road traffic safety, as well as streetscapes, vegetation, stormwater drainage network and on-street parking availability. Again, the requirement for a pre and post inspection has been added to the policy. That's the only minor change and is designed to assist with that identification of any damage of council assets. And the recommendation is before you with just one minor wording change in the policy itself for clarity purposes.
Thank you. Councillors, someone prepared to move this policy? Councillor Vogels. Do I have a second to Councillor Cole? Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I need to speak on that, but we did make one slight change after going through it, and it was only minor, and it was just to clarify something that could have been rather ambiguous. So thank you very much, Brooke, for the report and for making the change, and for council supporting it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vogels. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's going to be procedural. I'm just going to pick out one little bit which says make sure that the roads are fit for purpose. I think most of the Shire roads are. It's the other roads around the district that I have trouble with. It's fitted in on fit for purpose on it. Anyway, that's one.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillors, if there's nothing further, all in favour? Carried. Item 9.6 is the Recreation Reserves Management Policy. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, this policy provides a guide to the funding and management arrangements for recreation reserves within Corangamite Shire. The policy applies to rec reserves across the Shire, which generally provide public access and are used for community purposes on both council-owned and land not owned by council. But it should be noted that these parcels subject to this policy are actually all on state government owned land. The reserve management policy defines reserves located throughout the Shire as township reserves, rural reserves or lake reserves. In the past, council has considered Scotts Creek Recreation Reserve as a rural recreation reserve and has supported that reserve in line with the policy. A review has occurred in relation to the usage of that reserve, and we've identified there's been an increase. There's a club that calls the Scotts Creek Recreation Reserve home, and that's the Corangamite Wolves Soccer Club. We're therefore recommending, as a part of this review, that the Scotts Creek Reserve be considered as a township reserve in the policy. If council were to support this, there would be a financial increase of approximately $12,000, which would be incorporated into the draft 23-24 budget, and this increase would ensure that there's not a reduction to the other contributions council makes to the other recreation reserves. Councillors, the recommendation is before you. Again, there was a slight wording change for clarity purposes when we finalise the policy.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Ms. Love. Councillors, someone happy to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Macon. Seconded, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. As we know, sport plays an important role in the community, and reserves are usually the hub of the town where people can gather and connect with each other. I'm really pleased that this policy has put in the Scotts Creek Lions, the Corangamite Lions, sorry. There's a new soccer club going great guns out there at Scotts Creek, and they deserve to be involved in this little assistance. But there's also an issue with the state government, as Brooke alluded to. I've just got to find my little bit. That they are on Crown land with direct dwell committees appointed, and many of these reserves, their facilities are not up to standard and not compliant with the State Sporting Association facility guidelines. So they are change room facilities, range from very poor to good, non-compliant umpire facilities, non-compliant female-friendly requirements, and lights do not comply. And this impacts the club's ability to attract players and participants, and we need to be proactive in increasing the condition and attractiveness of infrastructure that generates revenue, such as social rooms. However, the focus is now on infrastructure that supports delivery of the support, such as the change rooms, the umpire facilities, and being female friendly. And so the council is asking the state government policy supports asset renewal and allocates adequate funding to support renewal in its own assets, including like-for-like replacements and upgrades, making it easier and better for these rec reserves to get the participants that they need. If we don't have these facilities, then people will just go elsewhere to the bigger towns, and we don't want that. We want them to stay within our communities and stay locally and have local people play locally and support their towns. Because if we don't have them, the towns also die as well. So I really are calling on the state government to look at the funding that they are giving and to support the renewal of the assets. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Well said. Councillor Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. The challenges associated with these recreation reserves in generating revenue is pretty well known. They're mostly run by volunteer committees of management, which gives our community access to all of our 5 visions. The connected community, but particularly community leadership. So leadership of these committees is something that is well valued within our society. It gives people the opportunity to be able to formally run a committee and be able to provide advocacy for money. So yes, it's a very important part of our role, and I'm very happy to support the new policy.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, Councillor Beard.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, and certainly, definitely, it's a given. Happy to support the Corangamite Lions or the Scotts Creek Reserve to bring them into the categories for ongoing funding. I live directly opposite a recreation reserve in Cobden, And this is, I'm going to do a shout out to our volunteers, because I can hear, and this is of no disrespect because I just take my hat off to them, but very early hours in the morning, either the mower's going or you hear the sprinklers turning around during cricket season, hoses are being moved, and then all of a sudden you come footy season and lights are being turned on. All of these things cost money, and it is all done by volunteers. It's absolutely incredible. We've got a handful of rec reserves there that are purely ran by volunteers, both cricket and footy season, and not disregarding the other sports that are also played there. But I can't speak highly enough of the volunteers that do this, all because they just love it, and they're keeping our communities connected. And as Councillor Macon said, how important it is to keep our kids active and within their own communities. So sometimes a lot of this is priceless. You can't put a figure on the volunteer work that gets done at these rec reserves, but it does come a point where the state does have to step up and realise it's their asset, and they need to actually be putting money where the mouth is too. And yeah, so thank you, Councillor Macon, for highlighting the need for that better funding stream for these volunteer rec reserves. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillor Kennedy, then Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I endorse the comments that have gone before me, and there's just no need to espouse further on the benefits of the recreation reserves in our communities. And I just want to say a huge thanks to the committees that run them and the volunteers as well, because as Councillor Beard said, it's pretty amazing, and they just give so much to the whole community, and we just fully appreciate that. But we know that for the management committees, it's really hard for them to do their work because they don't get that support from DECA, as Councillor Macon said. They've got the operating costs, the maintenance. They've got to work hard to win grants. I mean, that's not easy. And just generating revenue as well is hard for them as well. And the thing is that this policy is about what we're giving them, what council is giving the Recreation Reserve committees from our recurrent budget to help them with their operating costs. And, it's a shame. I mean, it's not a shame. We do it because they're so important and we value our communities so highly. And so, I agree totally with this recommendation, and absolutely behind helping them out, with the work that they do, because there's so much that comes back to the community. It's part of our work, part of our remit, at delivery of assistance to our community. So, but they're not getting that support in turn from DECA, and I think that's a terrible shame, because DECA owns those assets. But I'm happy that we're helping them because they may not otherwise be there. So totally support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and hear to everything that everyone else has said, and DECA should be putting funds into these reserves rather than council. I think we're on a pretty tight sort of budget, and it's just embarrassing on the behalf of the state government that they aren't stumping up these reserves that are on their land. And just note that it is the Corangamite Lions, and it is the hub of soccer within the Corangamite Shire, because it's the only soccer club in the Corangamite Shire, and they're doing a fantastic job. And they're going back before they started, after football finished, and it was just a vacant block that, because I live next door, I had to go over and mow with the tractor, so sort of end up with a fair few tractor cleat marks. But that's another story. But they've got all them out, and they play a great game of soccer, and it'd be good to see to pick up some funding in the near future to get proper drainage, because it's a fantastic facility and a fantastic place to play soccer until it gets too wet. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Vogels, and thanks for volunteering at the reserve. It's really good. Councillors, I'll put this to a vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.7 is the 12 Apostles Trail project update. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, councillors, this may well be my last update because the destination is in sight and we hopefully will be finished for the next report. The construction of the trail between Timboon and Port Campbell is well underway, with 17 kilometres constructed here to the lookout at Port Campbell. There's still some cattle underpass bridges that are just to be finalised, and then we'll have off-road full trail connection. There has been some challenges over the course of the last 3 years, in particular the last 12 months, with weather being a real issue for this project, with the rain as well as the ground conditions. The construction industry changes after COVID have also had an impact with staff shortages, skilled labour shortages, material supply delays, as well as subcontractor availability. There's been a lot of work done on locating the important Telstra assets along the Cobden-Port Campbell Road between Campbell's Creek Bridge and Port Campbell. The Telstra assets are the fibre optic cables and the copper cables, and so very much wanting to avoid any conflict with those assets. So there was quite a bit of time spent, particularly over the wetter months last year, to locate those assets. But the final 1.5 kilometres is being constructed now, and the path down from the lookout is boxed. I'm not sure it did come that way, whether it's been concreted yet or not, or part of it has, and the excavation for the connection between Port Campbell and Campbell's Creek is also underway. There's been some work for the ongoing management arrangements with Parks Victoria, where the parts of the trail intersect with the Port Campbell National Park and also the Port Campbell Camping and Recreation Reserve, which is a little part of green grassed area near the bus stop. So the arrangement is to enter into a 5-year lease with Parks Victoria for those sections until such time Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority have organised what they want to do, and that land transfers over to them. The project timeline has been pushed out a bit. We had some delays with last year with largely the weather, but largely the funding. So the last package of works was in excess of our budget, and we council and the state government had a number of conversations to try and resolve the balance of shortfall so that we could get the product delivered to the design standard that we want and that the visitors will expect. So we were able to resolve that, but as a consequence, the project timeline was pushed out, and at this stage it's anticipated to be completed by July 2023. The project is within budget, and as I said, the total cost increased from the original estimates of just under $7 million to just over $12 million, with the state government contributing $8.6 million and council also contributing a substantial amount of money, nearly $3 million towards the project. A complementary project that's been delivered whilst we've been constructing the trail is the reactivation of a Crown land parcel at the Parati Recreation Reserve. So working with a committee that was just maintaining a low profile there, we've been able to reinstate the old shelter shed that came from the school, install a eco toilet, install a water connection and some park furniture, and it's a great midway stop for the trail users between Timboon and Port Campbell. So councillors, excitingly, we're nearly there, and I'll provide this report for your update. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Someone like to move recommendation? Councillor Macon, do I have a seconder? Councillor Vogels? Councillor Macon?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Ms Love, for that report. I was very excited reading through this report. I think I've said it plenty of times before, but this is a very exciting one, not only for Timboon and Port Campbell, but the wider community and the council all involved. But it's another way to connect not only Timboon to Port Campbell, but to connect Cobden and Camperdown to the coast as well. As Ms Love has said, the cattle passes have been installed, the majority of them. We're just waiting on handrails and approaches to be completed. And this is a huge milestone for the project, making it more safer for everyone on the trail. And it was made mention of the Paretti Rec Reserve with the eco-friendly toilet, water and furniture is a fantastic asset to the trail, meaning people can stop and rest and even have a little spot to meet people and have a picnic. It's a great little area that's been brought back to life and it's utilising the asset again. So I congratulate Brooke and her team on seeing this as a little win for the Shire and being able to reutilise an asset that was just sitting there. I had a person message me recently saying he and a group of friends rode from Cobden to Port Campbell and saying how great the trail was and would be fantastic when it was all finished. They were very impressed with the new bridge just out of Timboon and couldn't wait for the underpass bridges. And the group also had stops in Timboon for coffee and cake, Port Campbell for lunch, and then back again to Timboon for another drink, and then on to Cobden where they finished at the local watering hole. It just shows that there's benefits for the wider community, not just on the people on the trail. The whole Shire gets a benefit out of it. Every shop and everything else gets a benefit out of it. People are seeing what we have to offer and they're telling their friends and telling their mates to come and visit this great place that we have here. And we are hearing more and more people are wanting a nature-based experience, and this trail delivers it in spades. It is great. But I do notice on the report there is a stage 2. But the stage 2 is the Port Campbell to Princetown stage. But unfortunately, that's not our stage. That's the state government. And again, the state government is letting down the side. It's put in their Shipwreck Coast Master Plan. It's on the Great Ocean Road Coast and Parks Authority Regional Trail Strategy Development. And it's part of the state and federal priorities, but yet it's nowhere to be seen. They haven't even started the planning. So I'm urging the state government to get their skates on and do the planning for the next part of the works, which would connect Port Campbell to the 12As, and therefore we connect up to the Great Ocean Walk, and it'll just make a fantastic trail for everyone involved. You get from Camperdown all the way to Apollo Bay, and I can't imagine how great that would be for every single little town along the way to have extra people come along and visit their places and visit their towns and see how great we are and see how good we do it in the country. We are fantastic and we should be proud of what we've achieved. And I can't say how much the state government are letting the side down yet again. We've already said that they've let us down, and again, we just need them to step up to the plate and do what needs to be done. The Shipwreck Coast Master Plan was back in 2015. Come on guys, you're letting the side down. I can't just state it enough. But as I've said, Ms Love, you must be congratulated. Your team, the way you've managed this project has been fantastic. You need a huge pat on the back, and I'm sure we all can't wait to the end of July, fingers crossed, weather permitting, that this trail will be finished. So congratulations and well done.
Thank you, Councillor Lakin. Councillor Vogels.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just enthralled over there, Kate. She's covered a lot and more, and even gone the rant that I was going to do. So I think Packer hopefully will pick up the once they take over, pick up the loose ends and maybe drive it, run it, get something done out the towards the 12 Apostles Way. But this is on track, and so you have to stop at stoplights coming in today because it's on track. The track's on track. And thank you so much, Brooke, for your effort that you're putting into this and your passion. The only other thing I'll comment on is the Paretti Rec Reserve. It's been sleeping for a long time, and as soon as something presented itself for them to do, they just leapt into action. They're so engaged and so happy that it's getting used. And I think with the new toilets out there, there's probably one big tree that's going to be very, very happy from now on. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Councillors, I don't know there's much more to be said. Councillor Hickey.
Thanks, Mayor. No, look, I have to endorse exactly what has been already stated, but I'd also like to congratulate Brooke Love and her team for the work that she's put into this, but also recognise the previous council with their vision and their forethought and their budgeting to enable this to happen. We could nearly get off the station in Camperdown and ride to Port Campbell without using the public roads, but there's a small section of Cobden Road that probably is overused. So I'd just encourage anybody in the community who's coming up with some big, hairy, audacious goals to just have a think about where other walking tracks could go that could connect the trail from Lake Bullamuroi Road to the Port Campbell outlook. So yeah, look, I congratulate the other councils and yeah, just encourage us all to keep our eyes open and our minds clear and see how we can continue this trail.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Beard.
Sorry, and through you, Madam Mayor, and I think this will be a memory for you too. I think one of my very first briefings 12 years ago when David Pope, Matty Bowker, and I think was it Mark Cuthell, came and presented to council, and it was their vision of this trail. And I really hope, if they're not watching tonight, that they are actually sitting back though throughout this whole process and being really proud to know that they had a hand in that. And it was a real vision back then, where you just thought, oh, as if, because you just knew how much it was going to cost. Never did we dream that it was ended up going to cost. As the years went by, so did the price just go up. But they knew what they were going on about, and they knew what a trail like that could bring to this area. And yeah, as Councillor Macon said, it's that and more. It's in spades. So I can't not go by without paying kudos to those guys. As I said, one of my very first ever briefings, and just thought it was just a vision. So it's pretty cool.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. And it was just at my end of my term as Mayor in 2009 was when we first were out there at Lockhart and we talked about this trail becoming reality. So it's certainly been a long time in the making, and it's very exciting getting to the pointy end. And I know a number of people who've ridden the trail already and are just absolutely raving about it. And I know tonight we've been throwing a few brickbats at the state government with regards to, you know, get on with the next bit of the trail, and I totally agree with that, and I totally agree they should take responsibility for their Crown assets. But I do want to acknowledge the contribution the state government have made to this project. So we can't ignore the fact that they committed $4.5 million, and when this project blew out, they put in another $4.1 million, which is, you know, it's a fairly substantial investment in this trail. And acknowledge also the federal government who contributed $800,000. So it's a true three levels of government partnership, and I think this is how we get major infrastructure projects up in the future. I just think that the price of resources and the price of labour, and we know how expensive things are becoming, that no one level of government really are going to struggle to, they're going to struggle to do it on their own. So absolutely love to work with state government in getting the next stage of this trail completed through to Princetown. That's certainly the very much the long-term vision, and look forward to meeting with them hopefully in the not too distant future. I know that there's technical planning and things is already underway, and as Councillor Macon said, this is now a bit of land, so it's not going to be as easy. Perhaps, well, we can't drive it, it's going to be up to the state government and the agencies to drive it. So councillors, on that note, can I put this to a vote? All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Vogels, you've got a conflict of interest in the next item. I'll ask you to leave the room, thanks. Yeah.
Can't get back in there.
Yeah, we'll leave you out there. Ms Love, could you introduce item 9.8, which is the special charge scheme final cost for Grey Street in terrain?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, councillors, works have been completed on the installation of a footpath in Grey Street terrain, and the costs associated with the special charge scheme have been finalised. At its meeting on the 27th of September last year, Council declared the special charge scheme for the purposes of defraying expenses associated with the construction of the footpath. The footpath was completed in December, and this report now is to seek Council's endorsement to vary the cost of the special charge scheme and to serve notice to the benefiting property owners seeking their contribution. The recommendations before you.
Thank you, Ms Love, and I see that Mr Kelly once again has come in under budget. I don't know how he does it, he does a great job. Does someone like to move that recommendation, please? Councillor Canady, and a seconder. Thanks. Councillor Hickey. Councillor Canady.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, this footpath's been built for some time now, and it's improved the assets in Terang once more, and brought benefit to the community. And I see people using that footpath quite frequently because it is, an access point to the centre of Terang, and it's a pleasure really to be able to say that we've got some money left over from that project, and that we can return that to the contributors to the special charge scheme, and this is in accordance with our policy. So I've nothing more to say on it other than to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Canady. Councillor Hickey.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. No, I've got nothing much to add other than to say any project that comes in on time and under budget is certainly to be congratulated. The special charges scheme is a fantastic way to ensure that assets get built, and the contribution made by the benefiting landholders is a very good way of being able to do it. So, yeah, very happy to second this motion.
Thank you. Councillors, nothing further? All in favour? Carried. Thanks, Mr Tugwell. We'll take a vote on whether or not Councillor Vocals gets let down. All in favour? Lost.
Could have gave us a heads up that was occurring.
No.
Close run theme, Jamie.
Keep it quiet this side.
Item 9.9 is the procurement of the Skipton Rail Trail flood rehabilitation works, and Mr Tuckles just pointed out there is a declaration there from former Chief Executive Officer Andrew Mason.
Mr Mason's come back to haunt us, Madam Mayor.
He certainly has. He's left the
we'll
building.
Fix that.
So you'll do the changes. Ms Love, can you introduce this item, please, and we'll give you a break.
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, councillors, the October 2022 flood had a devastating impact on the Skipton community. As a part of that damage to public assets was the 8 kilometre section of Skipton Rail Trail, which is located within the Corangamite Shire boundaries. An on-site assessment has been undertaken by civil engineers to determine the extent of damage and the extent of rehabilitation works required. Funding has been sought through Local Government Victoria's flood support fund and has been granted to be spent on rehabilitation by the 30th of June this year. Council's procurement policy provides for circumstances where exemptions from tendering is permitted. The estimated cost of the works does exceed Council's threshold for tendering of $250,000. The officers are recommending that to ensure public use of the trail is reinstated as quickly as possible, to ensure that we meet the requirements of the funding, that we can deliver the project within that time frame. It is proposed that we approve, or Council resolve to approve entering into a contract for the rehabilitation of the trail based on exceptionally time-limited conditions and not to undertake a public tender process. And as such, the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love, and I know that myself and Councillor Cole sit on the Flood Recovery Committee, and that this is a project that gets mentioned at every single meeting. It's really important that we get these works done. Obviously, we want to make full use of the money that is on offer. Councillor, someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Cole. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Macon, thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, as you just said, every time we go to Skipton, and even when we don't go to Skipton, they sometimes mention that the rail trail has been damaged. And it was damaged in quite a bad way too. It was damaged quite dangerously in a few spots. Completely shut, no access at all. So, and I know they talk about the rail trail a lot, and a lot of people use it from Ballarat, coming out to Skipton, riding bikes and walking and all sorts of different things. So it's used a lot. And this section that's unfortunately in the Shire was the badly damaged section of the whole trail, and it just meant they couldn't quite get to Skipton. So they were pretty upset about that, and they've mentioned it regularly. And as was mentioned before, to put it out competitive tendering, there wouldn't be enough time, and then get the money, get the been stated again, and I have much pleasure in moving this.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. Councillor Makin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. More than happy to support this recommendation. As we've heard from me before, I'm very passionate about trails, and to get this trail back up and running again would be an asset to the town and everyone involved. So more than happy for this to happen. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Makin. Councillors, there's nothing further. All those in favour? Carried. Item 9.10 is the Quick Response Grants allocation for March 2023. Mrs Lindley, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Quick Response Grant program has a fixed budget that Council provides annually for the distribution of funds to Shire community groups. The program has a rolling intake, and this flexible approach allows Council to allocate small amounts of money to different groups, resulting in positive outcomes for the community. For the month of March, 3 applications have been received. They are from the Newton District Residents Association for funding towards the purchase of plywood to construct Christmas decorations for the Newton community, the Camperdown Golf Club for funding towards the purchase and installation of a screen door, and the Camperdown Clock Tower Quilters towards quilting materials and long arm quilting costs. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mrs Lindley. Councillors, so I'd like to move this recommendation. Thanks, Councillor Beard. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cole. Councillor Beard.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, and I know Councillor Cole, I think we were getting the eyes then as to who was going to give in first, but we all enjoy this part of the meeting where we get to provide not significant amounts of money to community groups, but ones that really do hit the nail on the head and make a significant difference to these groups. I just want to make mention the purchase of the screen door, a security door, by the Camperdown Golf Club. I've received information, just for Council's information, that they, at time of putting in their application, they hadn't received a quote from the local businesses, but they have intention of certainly spending that money within the local municipality if still able to do so. I think that's a great reminder for all our community groups that we support local wherever we can. It's certainly looked upon favourably. It's not a deal breaker because we know not all products can be sourced or bought locally, but I think it's a reminder that a lot of our businesses, whether that be commercial, trade, or whoever it may be, they just want to be given a chance, and let them decide whether or not they can provide the service or the stock. So it's great that the golf club have certainly been able to be flexible in that regard, but it did just come down to the timing of the application needing to be in. So just wanted to reiterate that one. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Beard. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For you, I'm just always happy to move this one, and I'm just noting that time's running out for people to get in and get their money. There's still some chunks of money left. The Central Ward has got $2,015.50, and North Ward $1,150. Coastal's got $100, and $555 in South Central. So there's still some money sitting there that can be used to do some good in the community, and people should get in and if they've got an idea for something, put in for it, because time is running out. And we might be able to do a Christmas party if they don't spend it.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillors, all in favour? That's carried. Item 9.11 is the Essex Instrument of Delegation Council to Council staff. Mr Plozza.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. This report presents Council with an instrument of delegation for endorsement. Vested in Council is a variety of powers and obligations under dozens of pieces of legislation. Because Council can only make decisions via resolution, Council opts to delegate these powers. Majority of them are delegated to the CEO directly, who sub-delegates them. But many of these powers, which are the subjects of the report tonight, can only be delegated to specific officers. We review this instrument every 6 months. Since the last review, there's been some changes to the Planning and Environment Regulations and to the Crematoria Act, and these are reflected in the document.
Thank you, Mr Plozza. Councillors, someone move this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Seconded, Councillor Canady. Councillor Vogels, do you want to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to move that. That's very procedural, very important, but very procedural, and so council can operate smoothly and faster than if everyone's got to approve everything all the time. So, thank you.
Things move slowly in local government, but they'd be a lot slower if we didn't have this delegation. Councillor
Potentially.
Nothing further to add, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
All those in favour? Carried. Item 10, councillors, is other business. Does anybody have any issues of other business they wish to raise? No, thank you. Item 11 is open forum, and I was remiss in the beginning of the meeting. I didn't introduce that we had, or acknowledge the fact we had former Mayor Neil Trotter with us in the gallery this evening, so it's great to see you, Trots. Is there any items of open forum come in on the live stream, Mr. CEO?
No, there hasn't.
No, thank you. If anybody in the gallery would like to ask a question or make a statement, they're able to do now. If they'd like to move to the lectern. Nobody? Amanda?
I need to stand up.
If you can, please, so the other councillors can see you.
I'd just like to congratulate Brooke. I know I've been a little bit of pushing emails back and forwards, but always with a great result and always upfront reply and always usually pleased with what we were asking as well. And it's all about communication. That's all we ask as a community. It's just communication. Everything's transparent. There's no hidden secrets, and it's not done. It's not done in that way, but sometimes it comes across as that, and you just hear niggles all around town, and they come up to us because we're visible, and so we're the ones that need to move it on to get the result, or get an answer, basically. So thanks,
Thanks, Amanda.
Councillor Vogt.
Thanks, Amanda.
Anyone else from the gallery? Yes, sir.
I've just got a question about Old Post Office Road in Queenstown. We had council and a member from Tesla come out about putting in charge stations in our street. And we're just wondering if there was any decision made about that.
Mrs. Lindley, that would be your department?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Our understanding is that Tesla is not proceeding with the placement of EV charging stations in Queenstown.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Julie?
I wasn't intending to ask a question, but thank you for all the nice things you said about Port Campbell, and I agree. I think it's been we are a very active community, and we've achieved some really good things, and thank you to council for supporting us in those works being a role to support us. But I suppose my question is our plan was from 2013 to 2023, and here we are. How are we going about the next 10 years, and where do we start planning for that?
Mrs. Lindley, that's your department as well.
There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So I think, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a plan that we're working on in terms of the community vision that council, that community actually put forward, the Corangamite 2040 community vision. So we'll be following up on recommendations from that document, which is a longer term document, and the active participation of not just councillors but officers in progress group meetings is the start of that planning process.
Okay. Anything further? No? Well, just before I close the meeting, I just want to let people know that the council electoral structural review, the draft document was released last week. This is with regards to how the council structure is made up, whether or not it becomes an unsubdivided municipality. We have council put forward a proposal to have 7 single-member wards. We want to retain the ward structure. The reviews come back with 3 options. The option of being unsubdivided, 7 single councillor wards, but with different boundaries that council had identified, or 4 wards with 2 councillors in each. So that would mean an increase in the number of councillors around the table to 8. So that draft document is out for review at the moment and will close. Submissions can be made up until the 12th of April. Council have decided today that we will hold a special meeting. Originally we had planned to hold that meeting on the 11th of April. That really doesn't give a lot of time for Council to give direction or give the community indication on what we're thinking. So we've moved that meeting forward now to 5 p.m. on the 4th of April, which will be live streamed. But once again, we had, I think, over 20 submissions which were made to the VEC, which was great. People from our communities voicing their concerns and their issues with the structure review. So I'd certainly encourage people to have a look on the VEC website and look at the document that's been produced. Watch the meeting next week if you're interested and really keen. You know, the submissions that were made were certainly listened to and taken on board by the VEC. So very grateful to the community groups and individuals who took their time to contribute. But that's where we'll be moving forward, and I believe the final report comes out mid to late May. That's when the decision will be made about what Corangamite looks like in the future. In the meantime, thank you to people who have come out this evening. It's always really good to come to Port Campbell. You know, the scenery is magnificent while we're holding our briefing. It's very distracting when we're sitting here during the day, but we always enjoy taking the council meeting out of Camperdown and having a look at the communities right across Corangamite Shire. So thank you to those who are watching online, councillors and officers. I'll close the meeting. Thank you.